Pull open that old kitchen drawer, the one jammed with yellowing recipes and weirdly cheerful cookbooks. You'll see faded photos, casseroles smothered in golden cheese, steaming bowls of noodle soups, all born from shelves packed with cans and boxes. But why did everyone stop making these? Do today's pantries even hold the same magic? And could these forgotten dishes secretly solve our weeknight dinner drama? Let's dig deep, stir up nostalgia, and find out what we've been missing. Step through the avocado green doorway into a 1970s kitchen, and you're instantly hit with something that feels familiar, but just a little off. A scent of onion soup mix and warm bread, maybe, drifting past Formica countertops and Tupperware lids. The shelves look different than the ones we have today. They're packed, but not with superfoods or trendy snack packs. Instead, you'll find food that lasts, canned, jarred, boxed, and forever reliable. Let's start right after breakfast, when Mom or Dad would peek into the pantry to puzzle out what's for dinner. Almost every kitchen had a stack of Campbell's soup cans. Chicken noodle, tomato, cream of mushroom, especially cream of mushroom. That stuff wasn't just for soup. It was the secret star of casseroles, sauces, even skillet dinners. One mom used to joke, "Any dinner can be fixed with a can of mushroom soup and enough cheese." Beside those soup cans glinting their red and white labels, you'd spot cans of Spam and tuna fish. Spam was a miracle. It didn't need a fridge, and it could turn into a fancy breakfast, meat for fried rice, or the crunchiest salty sandwich you'd ever tasted. Some people hated it, but others just shrugged and said, "It gets the job done." Tuna fish, meanwhile, was king for tuna noodle casserole or quick tuna melts on white bread. And don't forget the sardines and Vienna sausages for emergency snacking or for the truly brave added protein in a potato salad. Then there were the boxed lifesavers. Think instant mashed potatoes. So fluffy, so easy, so oddly satisfying if you'd been raised on them. Hungry for something sweet? The Jell-O box was always within arm's reach, next to packets of pudding mix and instant rice. Rice wasn't just fluffy and plain. It was rice-a-roni, the San Francisco treat. Something you could jazz up in minutes with a flavor packet and whatever else you had hiding out in the fridge. Mom would dump in peas or leftover chicken, and suddenly you had a meal that felt homemade. See, shelf-stable foods weren't just about convenience. They were a kind of security blanket, especially when money was tight or you didn't have a grocery store right next door. If you owned a can opener and a saucepan, you were golden. The backup stash, green beans, corn, fruit cocktail, could turn even the dullest night into a mini feast, especially if someone whipped up a quick Jell-O salad. Yes, with the canned pineapple and marshmallows. You laughed, but you ate it. Open up the spice drawer, and you'd see a simple cast. None of those 20 little bottles you find now, with names you can barely pronounce. There was plenty of paprika, mostly for color, not for heat, plus garlic powder, onion powder, and, most important of all, parsley flakes. Everyone had dried parsley. Some people used it for flavor, but a lot just liked how it looked sprinkled over eggs, rice, even casseroles. A dash of black pepper, maybe a pinch of nutmeg if you were feeling fancy. And that was your flavor set. But what about condiments? Pour out some Worcestershire sauce or shake up a bottle of French dressing, those bright orange globs. And you could take a basic dish someplace new. Miracle Whip sat boldly next to regular mayo, offered as the creamy bridge for potato salads, deviled eggs, or sandwiches. Ketchup ruled on meatloaf nights, sometimes even baked into that sweet red crust you never quite understood, but couldn't stop eating. Sometimes you'd run into pickle relish, those little sweet flecks in tuna salad, and of course, bright yellow mustard, just sharp enough to make your nose tingle. Weeknights meant scrambling things together fast. A classic meal might be something like Hamburger Helper, which arrived in stores in 1971 and never looked back. Suddenly, with one box and a pound of ground beef, you could feed a whole table in 20 minutes. That left more time for watching sitcoms or finishing homework, or sometimes both if the TV was on in the dining room. TV dinners, sealed in foil trays, lived in the freezer as backup plans for late nights. Salisbury steak, turkey with gravy, mashed potatoes with a tiny square of apple dessert on the side. It all looked exactly like the picture on the box. In theory, anyway. You'd dig in, tiny fork scraping at mashed potatoes that tasted nothing like real potatoes. But somehow, it didn't matter. It was hot food, it was there, and it was yours. Kids didn't always love these flavors, let's be honest. Sometimes the Jell-O jiggle or the suspicious cream of sauce was a bit much for picky eaters. There were the quiet negotiations, just 3 bites, then you can have dessert. But most families kept at it. Because that's what you did. You worked with what you had, and sometimes that even meant a late-night peanut butter sandwich with the last slices of white bread. And yet, these humble ingredients could make magic. The kitchen would fill with the scent of onions frying, maybe from a packet of dry soup mix sizzled with butter. And suddenly, you'd feel hungry, even if you weren't. A can of beans, maybe pork and beans, maybe kidney beans, might get dumped in with ground beef for a speedy chili. A splash of Worcestershire turning it smoky around the edges. But let's zoom in for a second on what dinner actually looked like. Imagine Mom at the stove with her apron tied tight, stirring a bubbling pot. The radio might be playing soft hits or the news, mixing with the rhythmic clatter of pans. One sister grated cheese while another set out the TV trays, hoping to claim the best spot in front of the set. Dad slipped in late from work, hanging his coat on the same hook as always, then lifting the lid off the casserole dish and joking, "What mystery meal have we got tonight?" Sometimes meal prep turned into a group effort. Someone would mash the potatoes, someone else would open cans and drain vegetables, and a younger sibling would sneak marshmallows out of the Jell-O salad bowl, only to get caught red-handed. Even the dog hung around the table, tail wagging, hoping for a scrap of Spam or a drip of gravy from the pan. These tiny routines built a kind of rhythm that made even the simplest meal into something you looked forward to. Something that tasted like home. Convenience foods shaped the way families cooked, not just once in a while, but almost every day. You didn't measure the time spent in the kitchen so much as you measured the laughter at the table. The meal was about gathering everyone, fighting over who got the biggest slice of casserole, or who would be stuck washing dishes. Everyone knew the difference between a 4-course feast and a Tuesday night pantry special. But that didn't mean you missed out. Instead, you learned the art of swapping one can for another, stretching leftovers into something that felt new, and always, sneaking in just enough cheese to make everyone happy. Of course, things weren't perfect. Some nights the meatloaf dried out. Sometimes, the green bean casserole turned suspiciously gray, or the Jell-O dessert wouldn't set. People whispered their kitchen disasters in the taw line or laughed about weird food combos after dinner parties. But looking back, even those mishaps became family stories, cemented by the tastes and smells of what got served. Stack by stack, jar by jar, the 1970s pantry was a place where solutions lived. It was resourceful, it was comforting, and it gave people confidence that there was always something for dinner, no matter how busy or unpredictable the day. All those cans and boxes weren't just food. They were a promise that if you showed up hungry, you'd go to bed full. So if you ask someone who grew up in the 70s what they remember most about those kitchens, it's the feeling of being provided for, of bubbling casseroles scooped out in steaming mounds, or the joy when a pudding mix magically became dessert in only 5 minutes. It's Dad saying, "Go on, have seconds," and knowing there'd still be enough for tomorrow's lunch. Even though a lot of these foods wouldn't win a nutrition contest today, folks still talk about them with a kind of fondness. There's something about the shared memories, the late-night raids on the pantry, the family pizza nights with English muffins and canned sauce, the laughter that spilled out over chipped plates, that makes the era feel close, even now. But that wasn't even the strangest part. As the years rolled on, the pantry itself began to change, and suddenly, those old standards started to disappear. So what happened next? If you shut your eyes and breathe in just right, you might catch the ghostly scent of a 1970s supper, cozy, creamy, and unfussy. These meals showed up everywhere, from birthday parties to Monday night leftovers, staking their claim on family tradition. Let's walk through a few of the crowd pleasers and see why they became legends. Let's start with tuna noodle casserole. You know the one. Spiral pasta, tuna from a can, frozen peas, and that unforgettable binder, cream of mushroom soup. Some folks added crushed potato chips or French fried onions on top for crunch. The sound of that topping crackling under a spoon was half the fun. You'd serve it bubbling hot, sometimes with a salad slathered in bright orange French dressing. Suddenly, dinner felt special, even if you just scraped it together after work. Then there's chicken la king. It sounds regal, but the secret was simplicity. Chicken, or cooked up with bell peppers and mushrooms, folded into a silky, thick sauce made with milk, butter, and, of course, more cream of mushroom or cream of chicken soup. You'd heap it over toast, rice, or biscuits, and the rich aroma, warm and savory, filled the kitchen. Little kids might turn up their noses at the mushrooms, but the velvety sauce usually won them over. Hamburger Helper crashed onto the scene, changing weeknight dinners forever. Just add water, meat, and the flavor pouch, and dinner's set. The stroganoff and cheeseburger macaroni varieties were huge. It was quick, filling, and didn't bust the budget. Kids learned early that none pot meal was code for less dishwashing. Sloppy Joes deserve a mention. This was the stuff of picnics and birthday tables, but also Wednesday rushes. You browned up ground beef, stirred in a tangy, sweet tomato sauce, sometimes a can of manwich, sometimes a homemade blend of ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, and brown sugar. The sandwich was messy enough to require a stack of napkins. But that was the fun of it. Shepherd's pie, comfort by the scoopful, was another regular. You'd line a baking dish with a layer of cooked ground beef and veggies, corn, peas, carrots, canned or frozen, then top it all with mashed potatoes, sometimes fluffed up from a box. Brown it in the oven, and you'd get those perfectly golden peaks on top. It ticked every box, hearty, belly-warming, and good for slyly hiding veggies from picky eaters. The dinner-in-a-dish crowd included meals like tater tot casserole and tamale pie. Tater tot casserole, especially, was a party hit. Ground beef, creamy soup, green beans or corn, and a crispy layer of tater tots on top. The tots would bubble and crunch, soaking up the juices until every bite was a little crispy, a little creamy. A few others deserve to be counted. Macaroni and cheese made with neon orange powder, Raft was everywhere. Chicken divan tukli, chicken, cheese sauce, and breadcrumbs, and goulash, an anything-goes mashup of pasta, beef, and a tomatoey sauce. Deviled eggs were at every potluck, and Jell-O salads, layered with fruit and marshmallows, sat in the fridge like edible sculptures. Family-friendly flavors kept things mellow. Sauces leaned creamy, not spicy. There might be a hint of black pepper, a soft tang from mustard or Worcestershire, but nothing that would scare off a kid. Even the spiciest option rarely went beyond a whisper of paprika, or maybe a sprinkle of Italian seasoning from a battered shaker. But why did these meals earn such loyalty? First, price. Budget mattered. You could feed a crew for a few bucks if you played your cards right. Most of these suppers stretched proteins with fillers, noodles, rice, breadcrumbs, or tater tots. Next, speed. After a long workday, no one wanted to peel pounds of potatoes or stand over a fussy sauce. You opened cans, dumped things in, and baked until bubbly. The nostalgia is real too. So many families remember sitting elbow to elbow at tables, trading stories while scooping up servings of gooey casserole. Dads carving meatloaf, sisters fighting over the last biscuit, or kids sneaking extra scoops when backs were turned. Memories stuck to those suppers, as thick as the cheese on top. If you want a modern spin, you've got options. Hate canned soup? Try thickening the sauce with Greek yogurt and chicken broth, or use fresh veggies instead of frozen. Swap chopped rotisserie chicken for canned in chicken la king. Kids allergic to dairy? Blend up a cashew-based sauce for mac and cheese. Add fresh herbs for punch. Try smoked paprika for depth. The bones of those classic recipes still work, you just have to give them a lift. There's something enduring about these flavors, something almost defiant in their simplicity. Nothing fancy, nothing fussy, but every bite wrapped in comfort. It's hard not to smile when you hear utensils scraping that last bit out of a Pyrex dish, or see the familiar golden crust split by a serving spoon. But what was it really like sitting down to one of these suppers? Imagine the scene, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, voices echoing as someone clatters the plates onto the laminate table. The dog circles underfoot, hoping for a tumble of tater tots. Someone always called, "Dinner's ready." And you'd hear the rapid thumps of feet on shag carpet. There'd be the everyday chaos. School books cleared at the last minute, siblings elbowing for a seat, the scent of onions lingering in the air. Picture mom, wooden spoon in hand, dishing out steaming casserole, the top still sizzling. Sometimes she'd say, "Careful, it's hot," as the youngest tried to dig in early. There's laughter, someone groaning about peas, and, almost always, the clink of forks as everyone takes that first bite, steam swirling toward the ceiling. These weren't just recipes. They were little rituals, tiny guarantees that, for a bit, everyone was safe, fed, and together. And let's not forget the small ways people made these suppers their own. Ask a few folks, and you'll get a dozen takes. We always put potato chips on ours, or Dad would mix in a can of sweet corn, or even, Grandma swore by the secret pinch of dried mustard. Maybe your family used elbow macaroni instead of egg noodles, or tossed in a handful of whatever cheese happened to be in the fridge. Even the most basic meal could feel like a family signature, a mark of home. Years later, it's those small details people remember. The scorched edge of casserole left in the baking dish, the way the toast would soak up every drop of chicken la king, the trick of using leftover meatloaf for tomorrow's sandwiches. So much of the comfort came from repetition, a Tuesday classic, a Thursday staple. The certainty that no one would leave the table hungry. These dishes even snuck beyond family kitchens. At church socials and pita potlucks, you'd spot those familiar pans, covered in foil, names scribbled in marker. Mrs. Jones's goulash, the Reynolds family's divan, the air thick with conversation, laughter, and the mingled smells of melting cheese and buttered breadcrumbs. Everyone swapping recipes, everyone sure they'd found the newest weeknight wonder. Of course, some dishes sparked friendly rivalry. Whose tater tot casserole bubbled best? Whose sloppy joes had the sweetest sauce? It was all good-natured, feeding the pride that came with feeding a crowd. One dad used to say, "If there's enough for seconds, it's a good night. If there's none left at all, it's a great one." So, with all that delicious nostalgia, you have to wonder, if these classics were so beloved, why did so many fade off the menu almost overnight? Is it all about changing tastes? Or did something bigger shape the way we cook now? That's what we'll dig into next, as we uncover the real story behind the disappearance of these timeless suppers. Flip through an old recipe card, and you'll wonder, where did all those casseroles, skillet meals, and Jell-O salads actually go? Not that long ago, you couldn't walk into a potluck, church basement, or neighborhood block party without seeing at least one dish crowned with potato chips or mushroom soup. Then, things changed. By the late 80s and early 90s, these classic pantry suppers had started to disappear. So, what happened? A big part of the answer starts with what landed in our grocery carts. Suddenly, labels mattered. Nutrition trends popped up everywhere, and people started to question, what's actually inside this can? Magazines and news shows ran stories about sodium, preservatives, and processed meats. Diet books warned that cream-based sauces and white bread were a fast ticket to trouble. For kids who spent Saturday mornings with bowls of sugary cereal, suddenly sugar was a bad word. Neighbors swapped stories about fat-free, light, or sugar-free swaps, and the ingredients that carried those nostalgic flavors became suspicious overnight. Just imagine, it's 1992, and you're standing with your mom in the grocery aisle while she checks a can of soup, frowning at the sodium content. She mutters, "We never worried about this when I was a kid." Now everyone's got an opinion. Friends at school talk about Snackwell cookies and skim milk. The old comfort foods feel like a guilty secret instead of a family staple. Food labels became conversations, sometimes arguments, in the kitchen. pulling everyone's attention to what should or shouldn't go in the cart. But it wasn't just nutrition paranoia. Something else was going on too. The world was shrinking, thanks to TV and travel. And suddenly, we weren't limited to what our parents made. I remember my aunt, who'd never left Ohio, coming home after tasting her first real pad thai at a shopping mall food court. She couldn't stop raving about the sweet, tangy sauce and peanuts. Within weeks, she was attempting spring rolls at home, and her old standby tuna casserole felt a little boring next to all that flavor. Sushi bars opened up next to burger joints. Indian food, Thai takeout, and fajitas took over family tables. It was like dinner got invited to a global party. And then, the fresh is best wave rolled in. Farmers markets exploded in popularity, and everyone started using words like organic and locally sourced. Even TV commercials changed. They used to show smiling families around a casserole. Now it was vibrant salads, colorful stir-fries, or someone carefully drizzling olive oil over golden roasted vegetables. Remember those food magazines with glossy, artful covers? Gone were beige casseroles. In their place, crisp snap peas, ruby tomatoes, piles of berries still dusted with morning dew. Cooking wasn't just about feeding your family. It became an aesthetic. The idea was, the fresher the better, and the more colors on your plate, the healthier you looked and felt. Celebrity chefs added fuel to the fire. Jamie Oliver, Rachel Ray, and others made it seem effortless to whip up 30-minute feta salads or rustic Italian pastas. You could almost hear them saying, "Just skip the can, grab something fresh." Instagram took it even further. A typical Tuesday night dinner suddenly had to be photogenic. I mean, who's going to post a lumpy helping of beef stew when you could show off a plate piled with avocado roses and perfectly poached eggs? The pressure was on. Meals became about performance and pride. You didn't just eat, you showed the world what you made. And here's where it gets personal. For a lot of people, those classic pantry suppers were a sign of getting by during tough times. Families who remembered rationing or layoffs were masters at stretching $1 with canned green beans or instant gravy. But as the years passed, folks wanted better, even if no one really defined what that meant. There was a hidden shame around foods that looked cheap or processed. I've heard people joke that you'd better hide the spam if you had company coming over. But at the same time, some families kept these dishes alive out of sheer love. I asked my friend Tracy why she still brings her mom's broccoli cheese casserole to Thanksgiving, even though her cousins wrinkle their noses at it. She just grins and says, it wouldn't feel right without it. My mom made it every holiday, come rain or shine. Things got even more complicated in recent years. As food prices shot up and busy schedules got even more chaotic, some people started looking back. There's something oddly genius about making dinner from cans and boxes. It skips a grocery store run and gets food on the table when life's a mess. There's this moment of relief, standing in your kitchen, knowing you can feed everyone with what you've got on hand. Online, you'll see posts where people celebrate the sheer practicality of hamburger helper on a frantic night. It's almost like the old pantry suppers get the last laugh. Food trends run in cycles too. Suddenly, what's old is new again. Retro recipes get resurrected by TikTokers, and Instagram feeds fill up with jiggly Jell-O towers and vintage Betty Crocker cakes. People dig through thrift stores for mid-century Pyrex or share their grandma's handwritten recipe notes. There's something magical about recreating a meal from your childhood, tasting it again after decades, and feeling like you've stepped back in time, just for a bite or two. Sometimes, it's about mixing things up. Modern cooks don't have to pick sides. You'll see someone making chicken stir-fry on Monday, homemade tacos on Tuesday, then whipping out a creamy tuna casserole when the fridge is empty and the kids are hungry. Creative touches pop up too. One friend adds sriracha and fresh herbs to her boxed mac and cheese. Another mixes roasted garlic and kale into mashed potatoes from a pouch. These old recipes adapt and evolve, picking up new flavors and personalities, becoming something uniquely now. So, did pantry suppers actually disappear? Not really. They just changed shape. sometimes hiding in nostalgia, sometimes popping up in the trendiest of kitchens. Some got healthier, some got bolder, and some stayed just the way Grandma made them. And thank goodness for that. No matter what's popular, those quirky old meals have a knack for coming back, especially when you need them most. Which leaves us with a tasty mystery. If you could bring one of these old suppers back to your table tonight, what would you choose? And will that first bite take you back in time, or surprise you with something brand new? Let's dig into that next. You're opening up a treasure chest. One of those heavy, awkward cookbooks with worn-out tabs and splotches from decades ago. Inside, you spot 25 recipes, each one begging for a second chance. Let's walk through these classics, giving them a fresh twist so you can taste the past and the present in every bite. 1. Tuna noodle casserole. Creamy sauce and chewy noodles, peas for a pop of color. Swap canned soup for Greek yogurt and sauteed mushrooms. Top with crushed garlic pita chips for crunch. When I made this last winter, the scent of browning mushrooms carried me right back to my grandma's yellow-tiled kitchen. I remember her humming as she layered the noodles, and every bite instantly felt like a warm Sunday evening in fuzzy slippers.
2. Chicken la king. Silky chicken and pepper medley in a velvety cream sauce. Use rotisserie chicken and fresh parsley to bring it up to date. Picture the bright red and green pepper specks dancing in the sauce, steam curling up as you lift a spoon. My younger cousin used to always sneak the mushrooms off my plate, grinning with a telltale sauce mustache. 3. Sloppy Joe's tangy sweet sauce hugs every bit of ground beef. Try turkey smoky chipotle chili and serve over toasted brioche buns. I can hear the sizzle from the pan and remember racing my older brother to see who could build the messiest sandwich. Ketchup stains and laughter guaranteed. 4. Shepherd's pie. Ground beef and veggie base smothered with potato peaks. Swap in mashed cauliflower for a
Tater tot casserole, crunchy tater tops, beefy filling. A little green bean for good measure. Air fry the tots and load on shredded cheddar for a modern crunch. Remember how every family had their own way of sneaking extra veggies into the filling? My aunt declared herself the tot queen, always insisting on extra cheese for that gooey, stringy stretch. 6. Goulash. Saucy macaroni and ground beef, bright with paprika. Use whole wheat pasta and a splash of balsamic to layer flavors. The paprika gives off a sweet, earthy perfume as it hits the hot pan, coloring everything sunset red. This was my dad's go-to when the pantry was nearly bare, but no one ever complained. 7. Macaroni and cheese. Neon orange, warm and gooey. Bake with sharp cheddar, add smoked paprika, and sprinkle with toasted breadcrumbs. The crunch when your fork breaks that golden crust is unforgettable, and when you see that cheesy pull, you know you're about to be comforted. 8. Chicken divan. Chicken and broccoli smothered in cheesy sauce. Broil fresh broccoli for more bite, then top with panko crumbs. That first whiff, sharp and cheesy, signals everyone to the table. Just like at my childhood friend's house, where we always tried to steal cheesy edges from each other's plates. 9. Ham and scalloped potatoes. Creamy potato rounds hugging savory ham. Layer in caramelized onions and swap half the cream for oat milk. The potatoes glisten under a crispy top, and the smell of toasted onions fills the house. It's the aroma of a Saturday spent watching cartoons and helping peel potatoes. 10. Chili mac, beef, beans, and macaroni snuggled in a spicy sauce. Mix in chipotle and top with fresh green onions for zing. Picture a bubbling dish, the spicy aroma tickling your nose and making your eyes water just a little. My uncle would always insist it wasn't spicy enough, then sneak an extra chili pepper in when no one noticed. 11. Jell-O salad, shimmering cubes, fruit suspended midair. Slice up real strawberries and use unflavored gelatin for a cleaner taste. The sunlight hits the fridge, and the Jell-O glows, a jewel-toned wobbly dessert that kids couldn't resist poking. 12. Stuffed bell peppers, loaded with rice and beef, bubbling in tomato sauce. Go vegetarian with lentils, sun-dried tomatoes, and brown rice. You slice through the soft roasted pepper and steam puffs up, fragrant with herbs. I remember the satisfaction of cutting into one as a kid, like opening a present at dinner. 13. Salisbury steak. Savory patties pooled in rich brown gravy. Use ground turkey, fresh mushrooms, and miso paste. The aroma is earthy and beefy, even if you swap out some of the meat. I can picture my aunt pouring ladles of gravy, everyone racing to mop up every drop with crusty bread. 14. Meatloaf, a crusty sweet tangy glaze on every slice. Shape into muffin tins for individual portions, mix in ground flaxseed for a health boost. The glaze bubbles and caramelizes, filling your home with the smell of ketchup, brown sugar, and pure nostalgia. 15. Swiss steak. Beef simmered with tomatoes and onions till meltingly tender. Add fire-roasted tomatoes and a splash of Worcestershire. As the steak simmers, the aroma is intoxicating. Tomatoes and char meld into a deep, almost smoky comfort. My grandpa always claimed this was the only way he'd ever eat onions without complaint. 16. Tamale pie. Polenta topping over saucy, spiced beef and corn. Use ground chicken and chili flakes, top with cotija cheese. The golden crust cracks under your fork, revealing fragrant, steamy filling. My cousins would argue over who got corner pieces with the most crust. 17. Chicken tetrazzini. Spaghetti swirled with mushrooms, chicken, and creamy sauce. Try whole grain noodles and fresh herbs. I can still picture steam curling from the casserole, the noodles heavy with sauce, and just a hint of nutmeg filling the air. 18. Pot roast. Slow-cooked beef, carrots, and potatoes drenched in savory juices. Try a pressure cooker and finish with a dash of red wine. Lifting the lid, a cloud of rich, meaty aroma escapes, the kind that'll make neighbors curious about what's cooking. Pot roast nights were always quiet, everyone too busy savoring to chatter much. 19. Franks and beans. Hot dogs coiled in sweet baked beans. Use turkey dogs and toss in chopped kale for color. The beans caramelize at the edges, sticky and sweet, the kind of meal that stains your fingers and brings out everyone's inner kid. 20. Chicken and rice bake. Creamy rice baked with chicken and broccoli. Try brown rice and a squeeze of fresh lemon for zing. The casserole dish emerges bubbling and golden, the fresh lemon making it perkier than you remember. 21. Beef stroganoff, tender beef strips in a mushroomy cream sauce. Swap with seitan or portobello mushrooms for a plant-based take. Hot noodles slip through the creamy sauce, and the earthy perfume of mushrooms fills the room. This dish was a crowd pleaser, and there was always someone licking the spoon behind the scenes. 22. Corned beef hash. Crisped corned beef and diced potato, topped with a fried egg. Use sweet potatoes, toss in diced peppers, and throw a dash of smoked salt. The first crackle of the hash in a skillet always got everyone to the kitchen fast. The promise of a crispy, savory breakfast for dinner. 23. Egg salad sandwich, chopped eggs. Miracle Whip, maybe some relish. Brighten it up with Greek yogurt, Dijon mustard, and snipped chives. The smell of boiled eggs and fresh bread always means quick comfort, no matter what time of year. 24. Cabbage rolls. Tender leaves hugging a cozy rice and beef core. Go vegan with wild rice, lentils, and a tangy tomato sauce. As the rolls bubble away, the tomato sauce turns sweet and thick, and I think of my neighbor's grandmother, whose recipe was legendary at every block party. 25. Pork chops and applesauce. Pan-seared pork, sweet apple on the side. Grill the chops, drop some rosemary in the applesauce, and finish with a swirl of maple syrup. The sound of sizzling chops and the sweet tangy aroma announce dinner is nearly ready, the way my mom used to call us down just in time for the first bite. The real magic is in the memory, and your kitchen fills with it all. Onions sizzling, the whoosh of a can opening, the sweet bubble as cheese browns in the oven. It smells like home. The table shines under soft light. You see bright Jell-O glimmering next to a golden-topped casserole, mashed potatoes steaming by the ladle, and that chili mac just begging to be scooped up. There's laughter, there's a little spilled milk, and someone always sneaks an early bite when the cook isn't looking. It's amazing how each dish is a time machine. Maybe your dad made meatloaf with too much ketchup and called it his secret sauce. Maybe you woke up to the smell of pot roast on Sunday mornings. Or maybe you wondered why Jell-O was ever considered dinner. Try swapping in plant-based ingredients, cutting back on sodium, or layering in fresh spinach here and there. But don't lose the heart of the dish, that blend of convenience, care, and shared memory. Snap a photo of your masterpiece, a split screen of retro and now, then let your friends guess the year. All these meals show one big lesson. Food is about more than what's on your fork. It's about taste, but also about stories. Funny, sweet, sometimes weird. Maybe you found a 1970s recipe card with cake batter stains and a note to double the cheese next time. Or maybe it's your first time ever making shepherd's pie and your kids ask why the potatoes are on top. Just like you asked your mom years ago. So go ahead. Try one of these old school suppers. Maybe you'll surprise your family, maybe you'll make them squirm, but you'll definitely make new memories. Only one question left. What'll you cook first? And whose story will you tell when the smells start drifting through your house? Next up, I'll show you how to take those family favorites even further by sharing the secrets behind quick, flavorful pantry makeovers that truly bridge the decades. You won't want to miss how just a few simple tweaks can transform the old-school comfort foods into your new weeknight heroes. We've traveled back in time, scooped out creamy casseroles, laughed at Jell-O salads, and remembered what made those 1970s suppers so special. And here's the funny thing. These pantry-based meals really do have something to offer us right now. With lives that move a mile a minute, groceries sometimes running low, and budgets that can feel stretched, the old-school wisdom of a well-stocked pantry suddenly makes a lot of sense. Think about what you get with a meal pulled together from cans, boxes, and a few tried-and-true spices. It's fast. It's budget-friendly. You save a trip to the store when you're running on empty, and you can feed a bunch of hungry mouths with what's already waiting on your shelf. And when you pick wisely, these dishes can actually be pretty balanced. Protein, veggies, carbs all in one. Use low-sodium veggie broth instead of canned soup. Whole grain noodles in place of white pasta. Or toss in a handful of fresh greens if you've got them. You get all the comfort of the classics, but with a little healthy twist just for you. But there's more to it than just nutrition or convenience. These recipes carry decades of stories. Maybe you remember your grandma's kitchen, the scent of onions and butter, or watching cheese turn gold and bubbly on top of a casserole. Maybe it's stirring instant pudding with your little brother, layering bananas in a glass bowl, or just fighting over the crispiest tater tot. When you pull a dish from the oven and it smells like your childhood, you feel safe, even if nothing about your day has gone to plan. That's comfort food in the truest sense. Let yourself experiment. Open up your pantry and poke around. What can you invent with what you find? Maybe it's a twist on tuna casserole with fresh veggies added in, or a shepherd's pie that gets a splash of hot sauce. Make a game of it. Challenge your kids to design the wildest retro Jell-O salad. Invent a new take on Spam fried rice, or turn leftover mashed potatoes into something brand new. This spirit of creativity, of not letting anything go to waste, might be exactly what we all need. Especially now. The most important piece? Share your results. Post a photo in the comments. Swap your grandma's secret casserole recipe, even if it's got a weird ingredient list. Tell a story of your own. My grandpa only ate meatloaf on Tuesdays. Or we called it kitchen sink stew because mom would throw in whatever was left at the end of the week. You'll find you're not alone. A lot of us have those secret family favorites. The ones we keep coming back to, even when new trends try to tempt us away. So don't be shy about old-school pantry cooking. Whether you're feeding picky kids, packing lunchboxes, or just want a warm plate after a hectic day, these meals can still do the job with style. Sometimes, the simplest ingredients make for the best stories. Food doesn't have to be fancy to be delicious, it just has to be made with intention. Maybe all it takes is a can of soup, a cup of rice, and whatever's hiding in the back of your freezer. Or maybe, it's the knowledge that your table, tonight, looks a little bit like the ones from decades ago. As you sit down to eat, remember that every meal is a chance to cozy up with the past and brighten your own table. What other hidden treasures are tucked away in our pantries, just waiting for a comeback? Maybe we'll never tire of trying something new, but a little retro magic promises warmth, comfort, and a kitchen full of stories worth sharing. And who knows, your next pantry supper just might become tomorrow's classic. Before you go, I'd love to hear what you'll try first, or what memories these recipes brought back for you. If your family has a dish with a funny name or an unusual ingredient, like grape jelly meatballs or potato chip chicken, tell us all about it. Let's build a community table right here in the comments section, swapping ideas, encouragement, and maybe even a kitchen mishap or two. After all, that's what makes home-cooked meals memorable: the laughter, the small surprises, and the stories we pass on. Thanks so much for joining me, and happy pantry cooking to you and yours.